The vast chamber of the Galactic Senate hummed with the voices of 300 different species. Today was important. A new species called humans had achieved faster-than-light travel and qualified to join their community of worlds. Ambassador Xylix of the Vordarian Confederation stood at the central podium. His blue scales shimmered under the bright lights as he gestured to the large screen behind him. "Esteemed colleagues," Xylix said, his voice echoing through translation devices across the chamber, "I present evidence about these humans for your consideration." The screen lit up with images: humans fighting wars, playing violent sports, eating meat with their strangely flat teeth. The footage showed their forward-facing eyes, a clear sign of a predator species. "As you can see," Xylix continued, "these creatures have an extensive history of conflict. They possess concerning biological traits common to apex predators." Senator Krax of the Bornari Dominion rose from his seat. "What classification do you propose, Ambassador?" "Based on our standard threat assessment, I recommend moderate threat species status. This would require careful observation protocols during their integration period." The Senate voted quickly. The motion passed with an overwhelming majority. Only 16 species voted against it. Far away on Earth, in a glass-walled conference room at NASA headquarters, engineer Alan Wright fidgeted with his tie. At 42, with graying hair at his temples and laugh lines around his eyes, he never expected to become humanity's technical representative to an interstellar government. Across the table sat diplomat Susan Kelly. At 38, she had spent her career in international relations. Her calm demeanor and quick thinking had made her the obvious choice as Earth's political representative. "So they think we're dangerous?" Alan asked, reviewing the briefing documents they'd received from the Senate. Susan smiled. "Apparently our teeth and competitive sports worried them enough to put us on a watch list." "That's ridiculous," Alan said, laughing. "Wait until they find out how much humans spend on pet care products." General Harris, the military liaison for the mission, cleared his throat. "This is serious, folks. The Senate's assessment affects our standing, trade rights, and technological exchange opportunities." Susan nodded. "We understand, General. But we also know who we really are. Humans have our problems, but we've come a long way. Our mission is to show them the complete picture." "The shuttle leaves tomorrow," the general reminded them. "The journey to Senate Station Epsilon will take 3 weeks, even with the new drive technology they provided." Later that evening, Alan sat in his apartment, looking at photos of his family. His daughter had drawn him a picture of Earth and a made-up alien planet with smiling stick figures holding hands between them. He smiled at her simple, hopeful vision of interspecies relations. His phone buzzed with a message from Susan. "Pack your toothbrush. Don't want to scare the aliens with bad breath on top of our terrifying teeth." Alan laughed and texted back, "Bringing extra. Maybe we can win them over with our minty fresh diplomacy." The next morning, as they boarded the shuttle, reporters shouted questions about humanity's future among the stars. Susan stepped up to the microphones. "We go as representatives of Earth's best qualities: our curiosity, our adaptability, and most importantly, our compassion. We look forward to proving that humans are valuable members of the galactic community." As the shuttle doors close, Alan looked at Susan. "Do you think they're really afraid of us?" Susan shrugged. "They don't know us yet, but they will." The shuttle rose into the blue sky, carrying humanity's first representatives toward a galaxy that watched them with suspicion and caution, completely unaware that the quality they would soon find most terrifying about humans wasn't their capacity for violence, but their relentless, overwhelming kindness. Alan's first steps onto Galactic Senate Station Epsilon were not what he expected. Instead of a warm welcome, 6 armed guards surrounded them as they exited their shuttle. Their weapons weren't pointed at the humans, but they were clearly ready. "I don't think this is the welcome party we hoped for," Susan whispered. Commander Zrix, head of Senate Security, approached them. His gray skin was marked with official rank patterns, and his 4 eyes blinked at different times as he studied the humans. "Earth representatives, Drix said through his translator. I am assigned to ensure your safe integration. These guards will remain with you at all times. Ellen smiled and extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Commander. I'm Alan Wright, Engineering Liaison. Drix stared at the outstretched hand without moving. Susan stepped forward. Commander, in human culture, we shake hands as a greeting. It shows we aren't carrying weapons. Interesting primitive custom, Drix said, still not taking Alan's hand. Please follow me for security processing. For the next 3 hours, they went through scans, questions, and received their official Senate credentials. The guards never left their side. Is this normal for new species? Susan asked as they finally prepared for their station tour. Your species classification requires these precautions, Drix answered. The Senate values safety. Alan wanted to argue but caught Susan's warning glance. This wasn't the time. The tour began in the main gathering areas. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved through the massive station. Some floated, others crawled. Many walked on varying numbers of legs. Alan couldn't help smiling at the amazing diversity. They entered the commercial sector, where shops and eating establishments lined wide walkways. Various species glanced at the humans, some with curiosity, others with obvious concern. Alan noticed something small and blue huddled in a corner. As they got closer, he realized it was a child. A month passed quickly as Alan and Susan settled into life on Station Epsilon. Their small quarters became home, and they established a routine. Each morning they attended Senate meetings, and each afternoon they held information sessions about Earth. Few aliens attended these sessions at first, but numbers slowly grew. Alan was reading reports in bed when the station alarms blared. Red lights flashed along the walls. What's happening? Susan jumped up from her desk. Their communication device activated. Commander Drix's voice came through clearly. Earth representatives, remain in your quarters. There has been an incident in the commercial sector. Security protocols are in effect. Alan put down his tablet. An incident. That could mean anything. Susan pressed the response button. Commander, can we help in any way? Negative. Stay in your quarters. The communication cut off. Alan glanced at Susan. They both heard the strain in Drix's voice. Something's seriously wrong, Alan said, pulling on his shoes. Susan nodded. Let's go. They opened their door to find 2 guards stationed outside. You must remain in your quarters, one guard said. Susan stepped forward. We heard the alarm and want to help. What happened? The guards exchanged looks. The taller one answered, a maintenance accident. Several station systems failed at once. There are many injured. We have medical training, Alan said quickly. This wasn't entirely true. He had basic first aid certification, and Susan had taken emergency response courses for her diplomatic work. Commander Drix ordered. People are hurt. Susan interrupted. We can help. Take us there now. Something in her tone made the guards hesitate. After a moment, they nodded. The commercial sector was chaos. A large ceiling panel had collapsed, bringing down lighting systems and damaging an air recycling unit. At least 30 aliens lay injured while medical teams rushed between them. Alan and Susan didn't wait for permission. They moved to the nearest medical worker, a tall insectoid being holding scanning equipment. We're from Earth. How can we help? Susan asked. The alien's antennae twitched in surprise. You should not be here. But we are, Alan said. Put us to work. After a moment of hesitation, the medical officer pointed to a group of injured aliens. Those with blue markers need to be moved to the emergency medical bay. Those with yellow need basic wound cleaning. Susan organized a transportation system for the blue-marked patients, while Alan began helping with wound care. He noticed the medical teams were struggling with one group of patients, large creatures with thick gray skin leaking purple fluid. What's wrong with them? Alan asked a passing medic. Peltharians, the medic explained hurriedly. Their blood is toxic to most species. We're waiting for protective gear. Alan looked at the injured Peltharians. They were clearly in pain. "Is their blood toxic to humans?" he asked. The medic paused. "Unknown. No testing data exists." Alan made a quick decision. "It's probably fine. Most Earth creatures with purple blood use copper, not iron. That's usually not toxic to us." Before anyone could stop him, Alan grabbed medical supplies and moved to the nearest injured Peltharian. The purple blood seemed to cause mild skin irritation on contact, but nothing serious. He cleaned wounds, applied pressure bandages, and helped stabilize 3 patients before the specialized team arrived. Commander Zrix appeared several hours into the crisis. He watched as the humans worked tirelessly alongside alien medical teams. "You disobeyed direct orders," Zrix said when he finally approached Susan. She wiped sweat from her forehead. "Yes, people needed help. Some of these species voted against human inclusion in the Senate," Zrix noted. Alan joined them, his hands stained purple. "Why would that matter during an emergency?" Zrix's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "You risk your safety for strangers who haven't welcomed you. That's what humans do," Susan said simply. Later, reviewing security footage, Zrix paused on an image of Alan helping a Peltharian elder despite the purple blood irritating his skin. The human showed no hesitation, no disgust, only focused care. Zrix sent the footage to Senator Krax with a simple message. The human threat assessment may require revision. Their behavior is unexpected. 6 months passed. Alan and Susan became familiar faces on Station Epsilon. After the emergency in the commercial sector, many aliens began to view the humans differently. Some even greeted them in the corridors without fear. The emergency alarm sounded during a routine Senate session. This time, it wasn't a station problem. A holographic image appeared in the center of the chamber showing a distant star system. The Supreme Senator Xorlak raised her 6 limbs for silence. "We have received an emergency transmission from the Ziltonian colony in the Andromeda sector. Their agricultural moon has suffered a complete ecosystem collapse." Images showed a barren landscape where fields once grew. Insect-like aliens huddled in shelters, clearly starving. "The Ziltonians request emergency aid," Xorlak continued. "The Senate will now hear responses." One by one, representatives approached the speaking platform. "The Delvian Confederacy offers our sympathy, but our own food supplies are limited this cycle. The Bornari Dominion cannot assist. The Ziltonians refused our aid during the meteor crisis 50 years ago. The Vordarian Confederation will provide emergency rations for 1,000 Ziltonians for 10 days. Each offer came with conditions or limitations. Some species offered nothing at all, citing old conflicts or resource concerns. When Earth's turn came, Susan walked to the platform. She had learned the speaking protocols well. "Earth extends its deepest concern to the Ziltonian people," she began. "We have consulted with our government. 3 colony ships currently heading to our Mars settlement will be immediately redirected to the Ziltonian system. These ships contain agricultural supplies, seed stocks, water purification systems, and enough food to sustain the entire Ziltonian population for 6 months." The Senate chamber fell silent. Xorlak spoke first. "Representative Kelly, these supplies must represent years of Earth's production efforts." Susan nodded. "They do. Our Mars colonists will wait for the next shipment." "This is a significant sacrifice," Xorlak noted. "They need food." "We have food," Susan replied. "Our colonies can wait. The Ziltonians cannot." After the session, Senator Krax of the Bornari Dominion requested a private meeting with the humans. His large frame seemed to fill the small conference room. "Your offer to the Ziltonians is troubling," he said bluntly. Alan frowned. "Troubling? We're helping people who need it." "Exactly," Krax said. "No species sacrifices so much for strangers. What do you want from them?" Susan looked genuinely confused. "Want from them? Nothing." "Nothing." Krax's voice rose. "You give up years of agricultural production, and expect nothing in return. They're starving, Alan said simply. What else matters right now? Krax's eyes narrowed. Every species acts in its own interest. This display of, what do you call it? Compassion, Susan offered. This compassion must have a purpose, a strategic advantage you seek. Susan shook her head. The advantage is that people don't die. Krax left the meeting visibly disturbed. That evening, he initiated a secure transmission to his government. The humans remain unpredictable. They sacrifice their own interests for others without clear benefit. This behavior makes no sense within our understanding of intelligent species motivation. Within days, Earth's ships arrived in the Ziltonian system. News spread quickly throughout the Senate. Humans had kept their promise. The Ziltonians would survive. In his private chamber, Krax reviewed records of human behavior since their arrival. The child in the commercial sector, the emergency response, and now this unprecedented aid to the Ziltonians. He started a new file labeled Human Behavioral Anomalies. At the top he wrote, "Their kindness appears genuine, not strategic. If true, this makes them more unpredictable than any species we have encountered. They act against their own interests for others. What other rules do they break?" As Krax studied historical records of human behavior on Earth, he found a pattern that disturbed him even more. Their greatest heroes were not their fiercest warriors, but those who sacrificed for others. Their most celebrated moments were not conquests but rescues. This, he murmured to himself, is something we have never seen before. A year after humans joined the galactic community, a major diplomatic crisis erupted. Senate security forces finally captured Captain Drez, a notorious space pirate who had raided ships across multiple territories for decades. The Senate Grand Chamber was packed as representatives gathered to decide his fate. 12 species demanded his execution for crimes against their people. Captain Drez stood in the center containment field, his 4 arms bound, his scaled skin dull from months in hiding. Supreme Senator Sorlak created a special committee to determine the pirate's punishment. Susan was selected to represent Earth's interests. The committee's first meeting quickly became heated. The Vordarian Confederation lost 37 ships to this criminal. Ambassador Xilix said, 612 lives. The only just sentence is execution. Representatives from other species shared similar stories of raids, deaths, and stolen cargo. When Susan's turn came, she spoke quietly. Earth acknowledges the terrible crimes committed by Captain Drez. However, we propose an alternative to execution. The room grew silent. We suggest rehabilitation rather than death. Voices erupted in protest. Ambassador Xilix rose from his seat. Rehabilitation. For this monster, impossible. Susan waited for quiet. On Earth, we believe that intelligent beings can change. Even those who commit terrible crimes deserve the chance to make amends. This is madness, another representative shouted. He killed thousands, and no punishment will bring them back, Susan replied. But if he can be rehabilitated, perhaps he can do something good with the rest of his life. The debate continued for days. Susan explained human concepts like redemption, forgiveness, and rehabilitation. Many representatives found these ideas confusing or naive. Senator Krax watched the proceedings with growing concern. He requested a private emergency session with the Senate's inner council. I have been studying human behavior since their arrival, Krax told the 12 senior senators. Their actions consistently defy our expectations. He displayed his research findings on the central screen. Humans approach the universe with concepts like forgiveness and second chances. They extend these even to their worst enemies. How is this concerning? One council member asked. Consider warfare, Krax explained. Every species we know fights until victory or defeat. But humans might forgive their enemies mid-conflict. They might help those who attack them. This makes them impossible to predict or understand as opponents. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Their kindness is not a weakness, Krax continued. It is a strategic anomaly that no species in the Senate has evolved to counter. Meanwhile, the debate about Captain Dres continued. After 3 weeks, Susan proposed a compromise. Earth will take responsibility for Captain Dres's rehabilitation in a secure facility on our planet. If he proves dangerous or unwilling to change, we will return him to the Senate for traditional sentencing. To everyone's surprise, the Senate narrowly approved the proposal. Captain Dres was transported to Earth under heavy guard. 2 years later, Susan presented a report to the Senate. The chamber was silent as a hologram appeared showing the former pirate working alongside human scientists. Captain Dres has provided invaluable intelligence on pirate operations, Susan explained. His knowledge has already prevented 17 raids and saved countless lives. The Senate watched in disbelief as footage showed Dres training security teams on pirate tactics. After the presentation, Senator Krax approached Susan. Your rehabilitation experiment appears successful. Susan smiled. People can change if given the chance. And if he had refused to change? Krax asked. Then we would have returned him as promised, but we believed in the possibility of redemption. Krax's expression remained unreadable. This willingness to trust, to offer second chances to those who have harmed you, it is unique among spacefaring species. It's just what humans do, Susan said. Yes, Krax replied quietly. That is what concerns me. Alan sat in the Earth Embassy office on Station Epsilon, studying reports from the new xenobiology exchange program he now directed. In the 2 years since their arrival, humans had established scientific partnerships with 37 species. Today, however, his work was interrupted by urgent news. The emergency broadcast system activated on all channels. Supreme Senator Sorlak's image appeared, her normally purple skin pale with stress. A lethal plague has emerged in the Cygnus sector, she announced. 7 inhabited worlds report rapidly spreading infection. The disease appears to have a 70% mortality rate. Alan watched with growing horror as images showed overcrowded medical facilities and mass graves. The Senate has voted to enact Protocol 87. Sorlak continued. Complete quarantine of all affected worlds will begin immediately. No ships will be permitted to enter or leave these systems until the disease has run its course. Alan understood the cold logic. Contain the plague to save the rest of the galaxy. But the quarantine meant abandoning billions to die without help. He immediately contacted Susan, who was on Earth for diplomatic meetings. We've seen the reports, Susan said, her face grim on the video call. Earth is preparing a response. The Senate voted for quarantine. Alan reminded her. No ships can enter those systems. Since when has that stopped us from helping people? Susan asked with a faint smile. 3 days later, Alan stood before the Senate, his heart pounding but his voice steady. Distinguished senators, I must inform you that Earth has dispatched medical ships to all 7 quarantined worlds in the Cygnus sector. The chamber erupted in shouts and protests. Your ships will be stopped, one senator yelled. They're already past your blockade, Alan replied calmly. Our captains were very determined. This breaks Senate law. Ambassador Xilix protested. We understand the quarantine is necessary to protect the galaxy, Alan said. But we're going in to help anyway. Sorlak raised her limbs for silence. Representative Wright, the plague is 70% fatal to most species. Our reports indicate it is equally dangerous to humans. We know the risks, Alan said simply. 4,000 human doctors and medical researchers have volunteered. They know they might not return. The Senate fell silent, struggling to comprehend. Why? Senator Krax finally asked. Why risk your people this way? Because we can help, Alan answered. And if we can help, we must. Over the next 3 months, the Senate received regular reports from the quarantine zones. Human medical teams worked alongside local doctors to develop treatments. The mortality rate began to drop, first to 60%, then 50%, then 30%. A junior Senate aide managed to capture and transmit footage that spread across the galaxy. a human doctor named Ben Miller continuing to treat patients while clearly ill himself, refusing evacuation until his patients were stable. 3 days later, the report came that he had died, still at his post. He wasn't the only one. 817 humans died in the plague zones, but by the time the quarantine was lifted, the treatment protocols they helped develop had saved over 2 billion lives. When the surviving human medical teams returned, the Senate held a special session to honor their sacrifice. Ellen attended alone. Susan was still coordinating relief efforts from Earth. After the formal ceremony, Commander Zrix approached Alan. The security chief's normally stern face showed an emotion Alan couldn't quite identify. "When you first arrived, we classified humans as a moderate threat species," Zrix said quietly. "I remember," Alan replied. "We were correct, but for the wrong reasons," Zrix continued. "We feared your teeth, your competitive nature, your history of conflict. And now," Zrix's 4 eyes fixed on Alan, "now we understand what truly makes humans dangerous. Your people will die for strangers. You will risk everything to save those who cannot save themselves. There is no logical limit to what humans will do when being kind." Alan wasn't sure how to respond. From Zrix's tone, he couldn't tell if this was criticism or praise. "Is that a bad thing?" he finally asked. "It is a terrifying thing," Zrix replied, "and possibly the most important thing the galaxy has ever encountered." 3 years after humans joined the galactic community, alarm sirens blared across Station Epsilon. The Drenari Empire, a powerful species that had remained hostile to peaceful talks, launched surprise attacks on 3 Senate worlds. An emergency session convened immediately. Representatives argued about military responses, defense strategies, and potential allies. The Drenari were known for their aggression and advanced weapons. Most experts predicted a long, costly war. Susan and Alan sat with the Earth delegation, listening carefully. When asked for Earth's position, Susan approached the central platform. "Earth will commit ships and troops to defend the attacked worlds," she began. Everyone expected this. Humans had proven themselves reliable allies. But Susan continued, "We will also implement what we call a dual approach strategy. Our military will oppose Drenari forces, but simultaneously, we will send humanitarian aid to Drenari civilian populations caught in the conflict." The Senate chamber erupted in confusion. "Aid to the enemy?" Ambassador Xilix asked, his scales flashing with alarm. "While they attack us. Drenari civilians didn't choose this war," Susan explained. "Their leaders did. We will fight when necessary, but we will heal whenever possible." Senator Crack studied Susan with intense focus. "You would help those trying to destroy you. We would help those who need help." Alan added from his seat. "That's different." The Senate reluctantly approved Earth's unusual strategy, largely because they desperately needed human military support. Few believed the humanitarian aspect would matter. They were wrong. Over the next 4 months, reports from the front lines told an unexpected story. Drenari military forces found themselves fighting a 2-front war, against human combat units in space and against human kindness on the ground. When Drenari troops captured human aid workers, expecting to use them as hostages, the humans simply continued treating Drenari wounded alongside Senate species. Stories spread through Drenari ranks of humans sharing food with enemy prisoners, evacuating Drenari children from danger zones, and protecting civilian centers regardless of which species lived there. The Drenari Empire, built on stories of outside species as monsters to be feared, began to fracture from within. Their propaganda failed against the reality of human actions. The war ended not with a massive final battle, but with a Drenari civilian uprising demanding peace. In a historic Senate session, Supreme Senator Xorlek called for a formal reassessment of humanity's classification. 3 years ago, we classified humans as a moderate threat species, she said to the packed chamber. We based this on their physical characteristics and history of conflict. Today, I acknowledge that we misunderstood humans profoundly. Susan and Alan watched from the human delegation's platform as Sorlak continued. Humans fight when necessary, but their true power lies elsewhere. Their kindness is not weakness, it is their most formidable quality. They help without conditions. They save lives without calculating benefit. They extend compassion even to enemies. The chamber remained silent as screens displayed images. Humans treating wounded Drenari, the plague response teams, Captain Drez working alongside his former hunters, and Alan comforting the lost Ilvian child on their very first day. I propose Resolution 7293B, Sorlak announced. Reclassification of humans as a guardian species, the first new designation in 4,000 years. The vote was unanimous. After the session, Commander Zrix approached Senator Krax in a quiet corridor. "Did we make the right decision?" he asked. Krax nodded slowly. "Now I understand what we truly witnessed. We feared their capacity for violence, but should have feared their capacity for compassion. When humans are kind, there is nothing they won't do, no risk they won't take, no enemy they won't forgive. What could be more terrifying than that?" In the Earth Embassy, Susan and Alan celebrated with their team. A message arrived from the rehabilitated Captain Drez. "Congratulations on terrifying the galaxy with your kindness. Some of us already knew how dangerous you were." Alan smiled. "Not exactly the first impression we expected to make, but not a bad one." Susan replied, raising her glass. "To humanity, scary when we're being nice, and completely terrifying when we're being kind." Alan finished with a laugh. Across the station, the Senate updated the official species database. Under humans, the new entry read, "Approach with caution. Will help without asking. Will save without reward. The most dangerously compassionate species in known space."